Hello everyone, my name is Ronald Coffell. I'm a student at Western Oklahoma State College, and today I'd like to talk to y'all a little bit about bravery and what it's like to be brave. Have you ever been afraid? Sure, we're all human, but sometimes in life we'll meet or know that one person in life that is kind of like a superhero or a modern day John Wayne. Even though he's been gone for so many years, since I was 7 to be exact, that person for me was my grandfather, the bravest, most courageous man that I know. Throughout his life, he saw a lot of things and accomplished many amazing feats, and I have the memories and the privilege of sharing those with you today. My grandfather, in my eyes, was just cut from a different cloth. He was definitely one of a kind. He was an adolescent at the time of war. Pearl Harbor had just popped off, and he decided it would be in his best interest to join the Marines and fight for his country. So off to basic training in Paris Island, South Carolina, he went. While there, he encountered a situation that would change his life forever. His quick action of bravery would be remembered by many. One night, on the way back to the barracks from chow, he and his brothers in arms noticed something suspicious lodged in the clay, just feet from the entrance of the barracks. My grandfather retrieved the item and discovered it to be a 30mm artillery shell. In basics, they don't use live rounds, only blanks. So having known that, my grandfather, not thinking much of it, decided to pick it up and give it a good cleaning with his pocket knife and keep it for his collection. While in the barracks cleaning the shell, he made quick work of it and was almost ready to give it a good rinsing off when he made one last pass with his pocket knife and hit the firing pin. To my grandfather's surprise, the shell started ticking, and he instantly knew the shell in his hand was actually a live round. The barracks there were held up, to my knowledge, it holds about 20 Marines. As soon as he realized the magnitude of the situation, my grandfather did not flinch, and he knew what he needed to do. Not only was his life in danger, but his brother's as well. Grandpa rushed to the nearest window, and just before releasing the ticking time bomb, the shell detonated, blowing his left arm off from the elbow down and somehow severely damaged his right foot. If he had not acted as he did, no telling how many could have been injured or even killed for that matter. Unfortunately, because of the accident, my grandfather was honorably discharged, but did receive the Purple Heart because of his acts of bravery. The medal for bravery was something I cherished to see every time I went to visit. Never did my grandfather once use the accident as an excuse as to why he couldn't do something or couldn't get something done. In fact, it was just quite the opposite. This was not going to define him. This is not going to be a defining moment in his life. He returned to his home where he met my grandmother, and they would stay married for 68 years, which is amazing in itself. They had 14 children, 5 boys, 9 girls, with 2 sets of girl twins. I couldn't even imagine having 2 sets of girl twins. You have to think, in these times, America was a scary place with prohibition going on, soup lines for people who couldn't even afford to feed their families. The mafia and the mob were running the streets, running wild, just to name a few. My grandfather never deterred. My father tells me many of the stories and tells me for this he's grateful, and Grandpa was also a hero to him as well. He told me he can't remember a time that they ever had to go without, and a lot of people did in those days. He loved his family very much and worked hard all his life to make sure everyone was taken care of. I only have a few memories of my grandfather, but the ones that I do have, I hold dearest to my heart. He really was like a superhero to me. There was never a boring moment at my grandparents'. If I was hungry, Grandma was always in the kitchen cooking something up. If I was tired, Grandpa had me in the rocker, sometimes playing melodies with his trusty harmonica. It was amazing to me how well he could play with just one hand. The man was bulletproof in my eyes. I remember the first time he ever took me fishing. We loaded up, headed to the nearest pond, and as soon as we got to the first pole in the water, the fish were taking the homemade chum that my grandfather had mixed up personally. I still remember that horrid smell like it was yesterday. I had no idea that after we caught the fish, the task of handling the slippery critters, ugly critters, to get them off the hook would come next. Grandpa, only having the one arm and the one hand, failed to tell me that my help would be required. I couldn't show fear to Grandpa, so I bowed my chest and manned up as a 7-year-old. My grandpa, seeing the fear in my eyes, grabbed the fish by the head and called me by my nickname, given by him. "Little Duck, pull that hook while I hold his head." Following his orders, I did just that. Once the hook was out, I remember like it was yesterday. Grandpa winked at me and accidentally squeezed the fish just enough that it slipped from his grasp and landed in my lap. I jumped around so fast you would have thought I was a superhero. A great man by the name of Teddy Roosevelt once said, "It's hard to fail, but it's worse never to have tried to succeed." To me, this is something my grandpa